People don't really come to terms with what that's like. You've argued in front of the Supreme Court, unless I'm mistaken, 9-10 times. Is that right?
Yeah, 9 times.
All in front of Justice Ginsburg.
Yes.
You've written over 80 Supreme Court briefs. You know, as an oil and gas attorney, you know, I look at I look at fracking, I look at different things, but 80 Supreme Court briefs, that's saying something. That's a piece of work there.
Well, it's a remarkable institution. You look at what the court has meant for our rights, for our fundamental liberties. And one of the things I trace in the book is how, going back to really the 1960s and the 1970s, the far left made a decision to try to use the court to force through their agenda. That they essentially decided democracy's too hard, that it's too hard to convince your fellow citizens of their radical agenda, and it's much easier just to get 5 unelected lawyers wearing black robes to decree the outcome for everyone. And
use them as a political tool.
That's exactly right. And it's why Democrats are so upset right now over Judge Amy Coney Barrett, who by later this evening will be confirmed as Justice Amy Coney Barrett.
You've argued in front of the Supreme Court, unless I'm mistaken, 9-10 times. Is that right?
Yeah, 9 times.
All in front of Justice Ginsburg.
Yes.
You've written over 80 Supreme Court briefs. You know, as an oil and gas attorney, I look at I look at fracking, I look at different things, but 80 Supreme Court briefs, that's saying something. That's a piece of work there.
Well, it's a remarkable institution. You look at what the court has meant for our rights, for our fundamental liberties. And one of the things I trace in the book is how, going back to really the 1960s and the 1970s, the far left made a decision to try to use the court to force through their agenda. That they essentially decided democracy's too hard, that it's too hard to convince your fellow citizens of their radical agenda, and it's much easier just to get 5 unelected lawyers wearing black robes to decree the outcome for everyone. And
use them as a political tool.
That's exactly right. And it's why Democrats are so upset right now over Judge Amy Coney Barrett, who by later this evening will be confirmed as Justice Amy Coney Barrett, because they see their control of the court slipping away. Why? Because the American people voted to elect Donald Trump and then voted 3 elections in a row to elect a Republican majority in the Senate. And a big part of the reason for those elections was the president's promise and the Senate's promise to nominate and confirm principled constitutionalists to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, it's something that every single American, whether you're Republican, Democrat, apolitical, you really need to get a hold of this, because it is part and parcel of your freedoms, your liberty, your country. And I don't know about you, Senator, but it seems, I've been doing this a long, long time, and I can see it coming full circle for the second or third time. There is no decorum in public anymore.
Yep.
There is no agreement to disagree. It's, if you don't agree with me, you need to be eradicated. When did that happen?
Well, there's certainly an anger in public life, and there's a division, there's a hatred. And it does seem to be getting worse, and I'm hopeful we'll come through it. We've had times of division before. We've had times, the 1960s were a divided time. There was a lot of anger then, and we made it through that. We obviously had, before that, we had the Civil War, and it was a tragic period, but we made it through that as well. We'll make it through this as well. But one of the dynamics you see is the left, there's a totalitarianism that they want to silence anyone who disagrees. And by the way, as conservatives, we don't want to do that. I don't want big tech. I don't want Twitter or Facebook to silence socialists, to silence Bernie Sanders or AOC. I'm perfectly happy for everyone to hear what they're saying, because it doesn't make any sense. But the left wants to silence the other side because they can't defend their views on the merits, and so instead we get cancel culture. We get universities that only teach one side of any argument because the left is afraid of engaging in what John Stuart Mill called the marketplace of ideas.
Absolutely agree. You know, I'm drawn to the founding fathers and their writings, not just the Constitution, but many other things. And you know, Jefferson once said, "I wish not to see all state representatives living in Washington, but in their respective states that elected them under the watchful eyes of the voter, and far away from those that would buy and sell them in the public marketplace." And you know, as many times as I've quoted that, paraphrasing, you know, it really had an impact this year. I don't know if that'll ever happen. Probably not. Probably go the way of term limits. But as you look at the situation we're facing right now, because you were a man of substance, I think you were a man of integrity and honesty. And when I ask you if you would qualify or quantify our political position right now, as people go to the polls, they've got 8 days left. What do they need to be thinking about? How do we find our way out of this fog?
Well, thank you for the kind sentiments. As I look at this election, I think it is as stark a choice as our country has ever faced in an election. The Democratic Party is galloping to the left. They're almost unrecognizable. They're certainly unrecognizable from the Democratic Party of JFK or Scoop Jackson, or even just a few years ago. Today's Democratic Party is driven by the extreme left. It's driven by Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and AOC. And so this election is really a choice about the vision for America. Do we support free enterprise and small businesses in America, or do we support socialism, the government in charge of the economy? That's a fundamental choice in this election. Do we support the rule of law and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, or do we support violence and anarchy in the streets? I think this divide is stark, and looking at this election, I think it's incredibly volatile. The hard left is going to show up. They hate Donald Trump with a boiling passion. They're going to crawl over broken glass to vote. And the open question is, does everybody else show up? If the rest of us show up, we'll have a great election. If all of us who believe in common sense conservative ideas, things like low taxes, low regulations, lots of jobs, people who want to reopen the economy, let small businesses reopen, let kids go back to school, versus Biden and the Democrats that want to shut it all down. That's a fundamental choice for our country that's going to impact the direction this nation goes for a long time.
Amen to that. Senator Ted Cruz, a final message, 8 days from the election. What's your message?
Turnout, turnout, turnout. If you care about freedom, if you care about the Constitution, if you care about the Bill of Rights, if you care about jobs and the future and the opportunity, if you want your kids to go to school, if you want the borders to be secure, if you want to stand with the men and women of law enforcement and keep our families safe, then go out and vote. Because the angry left, they are showing up in force. And let me say, listen, I get that some voters, they may not like something the president said, they may not like something he's tweeted, but it's not worth destroying the country over. Right. The stakes are too high to allow the angry left to tear down this nation, particularly when we're hurting in the wake of a pandemic, when 51 million Americans have lost their jobs. We need to get back to work, and we know the policies that produce that, and it's not the policies of the far left.
Texas Senator Ted Cruz, I always have a great time when we chat. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for taking the time. Appreciate it, Rick.